Obsessed with giving birth to a son, Anne Boleyn seduced her own brother in a desperate attempt to get pregnant. At least, that's the story we were told by the Other Boleyn Girl. In this video, let's take a closer look at the relationship between the Boleyn siblings and ask, was there really anything forbidden between Anne and George? Let's start with the facts. According to the Middlesex indictment, drawn up on May 10th, 1536, just before Anne's trial, she and her brother George Boleyn were officially accused of incest. And yes, the original document still survives. Here's what it says, word for word. Also the Queen procured and incited her own natural brother, George Boleyn, to violate her, alluring him with her tongue in the said George's mouth, and that said George's tongue in hers, and also with kisses, presents, and jewels. Anne was being painted as nothing less than the devil incarnate, a woman so consumed by evil and lust that she would even seduce her own brother. And her appetite, the document suggests, was so insatiable that she didn't stop at just one man, but allegedly had affairs with 5 different men. Interestingly, the Other Boleyn Girl chooses to focus only on the incest accusation with George, completely leaving out the other men Anne was also accused of being involved with. That's a significant omission, because quite frankly, the entire charge is absurd. Anne was a queen, constantly surrounded by ladies-in-waiting, servants and courtiers. The idea that she somehow found the time and opportunity to sleep with 5 men, repeatedly, without anyone noticing until April 1536? As historian Eric Ives pointed out, most of these accusations simply fall apart under scrutiny. Around 3/4 of the alleged incidents can be disproven, because either Anne or the man in question was physically not present in the location cited in the indictment. It's less of a legal case, and more of a carefully crafted character assassination. As you can see from the indictment, Anne's fate was sealed long before the trial even began. On the morning of the 15th of May 1536, while Anne Boleyn was preparing herself to stand trial, Jane Seymour received a message from the king himself. In it, Henry wrote that he would send her news at 3 o'clock of the condemnation of the Petain. To me, this remains one of the vilest accusations ever made against a historical figure, comparable, in a way, to how revolutionaries forced the young son of Marie Antoinette to claim his mother had sexually abused him. It's likely that George Boleyn needed to be eliminated, not because of guilt, but because he was a visible and influential figure at court, and more importantly, because he would have defended his sister. He and Anne were undeniably close, but emotionally, not physically. They had grown up together, shared similar educations, spoke fluent French, and were both deeply committed to the ideas of the Reformation. One particularly moving example of their bond is found in George's own dedication to Anne in his translation of 2 religious texts. In it, he addressed Anne as his most loving and friendly brother. At her trial on the 15th of May, the Queen defended herself brilliantly, calmly dismissing the absurd accusations and admitting only to giving money to Sir Francis Weston, as she had done for many young gentlemen at court. Nevertheless, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, guilty. Anne was stripped of her crown and all her titles, except the title of Queen. As for George, all witnesses agree that he put up a strong and intelligent defence in the courtroom that day. When the only evidence of incest was that he had been once found a long time with her, George replied so well that several of those present wagered 10-1 that he would be acquitted, especially as no witnesses were produced against either him or her. As we can see, the real George Boleyn was a far cry from the weeping, broken boy we see in the film. And the movie's portrayal of his execution, where George is practically forced onto the scaffold, couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, he died like a true courtier and used his final speech not to plead for mercy, but to preach the principles of the Reformation that he and his sister so passionately supported. Likewise, Anne did not sob uncontrollably, as she's shown doing in the film. She met her death with grace and composure, facing the end with the dignity of a queen. But was it true that Lady Jane Boleyn, Lady Rochford, betrayed her own family? In the Other Boleyn Girl, as in many other portrayals, Jane is painted as the spiteful sister-in-law who turned against the Boleyns, the one who helped bring them down. But the truth is far more complex, and historians do not agree on her role. Edward, Lord Herbert of Cherbury, a 17th century biographer, described Jane as a particular instrument in the downfall of her husband and sister-in-law. His account was based on testimonies from contemporary sources. Alison Weir suggests that Jane may have been jealous of George and Anne's close bond and that she was trapped in an unhappy marriage, but not all historians see her this way. Julia Fox, author of Jane Boleyn, the infamous Lady Rochford, offers a very different perspective. She argues that Jane and Anne were actually friends, and that there's no solid evidence their marriage was especially unhappy or dysfunctional. What we do know for certain is that Jane was interrogated by Thomas Cromwell, but no records survive of what she told him. Julia Fox believes Jane may have revealed some personal details about the king's sexual difficulties, things Anne had confided in her, but that she never openly accused her husband of incest with Anne. So, as with much of Anne Boleyn's story, the truth about Jane Rochford lies in the shadows, and her reputation may owe more to fiction than fact. I firmly believe that Anne and George Boleyn were innocent. The charge of incest was a calculated move, designed not just to destroy them, but to obliterate the Boleyn name forever. Accusing them of incest carried the weight of the gravest sin imaginable. In the eyes of the 16th century, it removed any chance of sympathy or redemption. It was, without question, an act of pure cruelty. Innocent brother and sister were condemned to die, and were meant to be remembered as traitors. But Henry could never have imagined that, centuries later, their legacy would be the exact opposite. They are not remembered as sinners. They are remembered as victims of political ambition, and in Anne's case, as the mother of one of England's greatest monarchs.